All right, all right, all right. Welcome, everybody. That is a recording. Many of you are smiling because many of you know that is the climax, really, of our high holiday service when we're singing that tune, that particular piyut, which is V'yetayu. And the refrain there is V'yitnu lecha keter malucha. And they will give to you a royal crown, right? Give to you, God, a royal crown. Now, when we're in that moment, we're not thinking of, I'm not thinking about anything at all. It's like pure ecstasy. It's just, we're just in it, right? It's just the actual, well, we're talking a lot about psychological states, kind of mental states, psychic states of being, and where these prayers are taking us. And hopefully, actually, you know, the height of consciousness that we achieve is one that is not one that's not even intellectual, cognitive, symbolic, but actually just transcends into a state of pure ecstasy. So that's the goal. The goal is actually to take such a methodical journey that eventually it leads to chaos, right? How do you get there? The truth is that song, well, yeah, you know, and we're all singing, we're dancing, and most of us are just happy to be singing and dancing, especially on Yom Kippur, and it's like we're delirious. But the song is not random. It's not just like, oh, we found a good tune to that song and you know, there are words in there, whatever. I mean, the idea of they will give you a crown of royalty is like fits right into the theme, some of the core themes of the high holidays. And we're going to look at those core themes today, and we're going to look at them in particular because our subject today is Rosh Hashanah Musaf. Now, when I say Rosh Hashanah Musaf, probably to the average, you know, to the average person on the street, that doesn't, or even Jew in the synagogue, that doesn't sound like the most exciting phrase we have to offer. It doesn't even sound like, oh, okay, Musaf is Musaf a fun prayer? Do we like Musaf? It's usually tacked on at the end of services. Does it generate a lot of excitement? But Musaf of Rosh Hashanah is a very special prayer. And we're going to spend all our time on it tonight, and we won't even scratch the surface. We will scratch the surface. That's what we'll do. We'll scratch the surface and hopefully decode it enough to have some sense of what this prayer is up to, because it is no understatement to say that this is one of the this is one of the great masterpieces of Jewish prayer, one of the most intricately designed, most complex prayers in our tradition. It is famous for no other, if for no other reason. It's famous because it brings to us for the first time the Alainu prayer, which we now say at the end of every service because we just liked it so much. But it was composed originally for the Rosh Hashanah Musaf. We'll look at it tonight, and that's just one of the epic moments in Rosh Hashanah Musaf. So it's this really intricate prayer, and yet, if you're anything like me, the first 100 times 200 times I opened a machzor, I had no idea what was going on in there. By the time I got to Rosh Hashanah Musaf, it's like, okay, time to go, moving on. This day is getting kind of long. I'm just sort of rambling through the words. But the truth is, in this prayer of all prayers, it behooves us to know the structure, to analyze the structure of the prayer, to see how this prayer was composed. And the whole premise of our series, the psychology of the high holiday prayers, is that when we notice a pattern, a design in the prayer, that design means there is intention in the prayer, and the intentional composition of the prayer suggests an attempt to bring us into a certain kind of prayer mindset, a certain kind of prayer consciousness. And so that's what we're looking for here when we begin to analyze these prayers. We're looking for what's the pattern But what does the pattern suggest about where my mind and heart might be headed as I say this prayer? And if you don't prepare yourself before the high holidays, especially for Rosh Hashanah Musaf, the longest of the year's Amidot and the most complex of Jewish prayers, there's just no way you're gonna reap its treasures. Okay, reap treasures is mixed metaphors, right? But you get what I'm saying. Okay, so let's begin. We're gonna take here a running start, but I want to give us a little bit of a when I say running start, I want to take us all the way back to last year. Last year, we actually did this. We took a very rapid fire tour through the Rosh Hashanah prayers. And there I really explained some of the basics. Like what does it even mean to say that there's a special, that there is a Musaf, that there's a special Musaf for the high holidays, that this Musaf is designed in a different way than the Shabbat Musaf or the Yom Kippur Musaf. So again, I posted this last time, but this is, that was much more of a crash course. And you can find that here on YouTube. And it's worth looking at. I'm going to repeat some of that information now just as a kind of a running start. But this is a good part one to what we're doing tonight. And to tell you the truth, this whole series, this idea of getting deep into the prayers, into the psychology of the prayers, was really, it's really motivated by tonight's session. In other words, what I mean to say is when I did that crash course, it was great. And I hope we got something out of it. I hope we saw the big picture of the holiday prayers, but it left me feeling like, like I really didn't do justice to Rosh Hashanah Musaf. That is, I was able to race through it and tell people kind of what, like in like quick, rough strokes, what was going on. But a prayer like Rosh Hashanah Musaf deserves our careful and thorough analysis. We need a whole hour for it, at least. And that's what we're going to do tonight. Okay, so let's say a blessing to just thank God for this this conversation that we have, this learning conversation that we have. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to use the same source sheet that I used last year, and I just added some things to it because it has all of the core information. Last year we raced through it, and this year we're really going to sink into one particular prayer. But I'm going to post this again, the same source sheet that we used last year. It's right there. And when I began, what I did in that, I took half of the class last year just explaining where does the structure of our prayers come from all together. How we start, where do we start with our prayers? And I'm going to do that I'm going to like just sort of remind us of that journey, which we took a longer time with last time. But what I said was when we're looking at the high holiday prayers, there are many kinds of prayers that we could look at. When you open this book, the Machzor, which this is the one we use at Ikar. When you open this book, the Machzor, so the good news is much of the prayers in here you already know. You already know because there's a Shema prayer in the morning, just like there's a Shema prayer in the morning every day of the year. So when you're looking at the Machzor, some of the prayers are just standard prayers. And that we're not going to pay attention to tonight because we can analyze that another time. Those are our standard prayers, and hopefully we're more familiar with them. Some of the prayers are what's called piyutim, which is sacred poems, and we find those all over the Machzor, and usually you can tell that they're there because it looks like a poem on the page or like a song, and usually we sing those, and those are some of the absolute highlights of the service, but we're not going to look at those tonight either because those are poems and they are songs and they are fun, but they're not the core of the prayers. And, you know, some of them are good and some are bad and some of them are, you know, we could talk about them, but they're not the essence, okay? So we've got standard prayers, we've got piyutim, we've got little And then we've got prayers that are unique to the holiday. And those are the prayers we're really focused on tonight. What are the unusual sections, things we don't see at any other time in the year? And some of those are little insertions and substitutions, but some of them are big, major additional services. And that's what we're going to look at tonight. And I said, I typed this last year. Here's a pro tip for you all. Look to Musaf. The main action is usually in Musaf. In other words, when they want to insert things that are specific to the prayers of the day that are really Rosh Hashanah prayers, they're going to use Musaf as the vehicle for the Rosh Hashanah prayer, or frankly, the Yom Kippur prayer. And next week, we'll look at the Musaf in Yom Kippur, which is also epic, but frankly, nothing is as epic as Rosh Hashanah Musaf. Okay, I see Taran's got a hand. Let me just hold one sec. And I want to say one more thing because I keep saying Musaf, Musaf, Musaf. And Musaf itself may be something that you're unfamiliar with, or even if you're familiar with it, you're like, what is that doing there? We say one extra prayer because Musaf literally means additional prayer. And we say an additional prayer every Shabbat. So just again, this is the last reminder before, like from last year, before we get into our material for today, which is, I'm not going to read all of this, but we went through these teachings. Maimonides reminds us that there are 3 prayers every day, morning, afternoon, and evening. And then on Shabbat, holidays, and Rosh Chodesh, there is an additional service, Musaf, additional. Musaf means additional, so it's the 4th prayer of the day. And we'll get to this eventually, but on Yom Kippur, there's actually an extra one, Ne'ilah. Now, when I say that there are, so again, weekdays, 3 prayers, Shabbat and holidays, 4 prayers, Yom Kippur, 5 prayers. Now, when I say there are this many prayers, that's a little confusing because everything is a prayer. Everything in this book is a prayer. When I say 3, 4, 5, I'm talking about the number of standing meditations, Amidot. And the reason that those are significant and those are the very core of the prayer is because it's the Amidot that are replacements for what once was the sacrifices. Our whole prayer system transformed after the destruction of the temple, and there used to be daily offerings, 3 every day, 4 on Shabbat, 5 on Yom Kippur. So that's the idea, is that they parallel the offerings, okay? The one we're going to look at tonight is that additional prayer, which there's a Musas on Shabbat, there's a Musaf on Sukkot, there's a Musaf on Yom Kippur, but the Musaf of all Musafs is the one on Rosh Hashanah, and that's what we're going to look at tonight, okay? Questions, and I see Taran's got one.
You need to unmute me.
Oh, sorry.
There we go.
You're unmuted.
What I was going to ask was, because you brought up Beatayu earlier, is that considered a piyut? Because I know that it doesn't necessarily have the same structure as most of the other acrostic piyuts.
Yes, it is considered a piyut. It is considered a piyut. And for our piyut, again, a sacred poem, and our high holiday services is just shot through with these beautiful piyutim. In a different class, we would just be looking at piyutim, and that's a worthwhile enterprise. But since we have these 4 sessions, we're actually not going to look at the piyutim. So piyutim are everywhere. We might find them in Psuke de Zimra, and we also might find them in the Musaf itself. Suddenly there's a pause, and just like now we're singing Melech Elyon, Melech Elyon, right? But that's an additional poem and not the core of the prayer. Okay, Noah.
Yeah, my favorite sorry for the high holidays is the Kohen Sachs one, mostly because of his commentary. It's absolutely amazing. But I'm wondering, how do we ourselves find the message of blending universality and particularity within the Musaf service?
Okay, so these big picture, I'm going to put a hold on that, but these big, huge questions are exactly where we're headed. What are the big ideas here? And we'll be there very soon. What is the massive, and how do they intersect with our particularism, our sense of God, our sense of the world, our sense of our uniquenesses, and all of those questions will arise as we begin to look at the core themes of the Musaf. But in order to do that, we're going to be a little technical tonight. We're going to try to make sure we understand the structure. And then once we see the structure, we're going to look at the individual components and ask, wait, so why is this here? Why is this blessing here? And why is it structured in this way? So we'll get there. We're going to be looking at the big themes, but first we're going to look at structure. Okay. Now, let me say we're getting closer, but let me say another kind of introductory framing for you all, which is that we said there are 5 Amidot on Yom Kippur, 3 during the week, and 4 on Shabbat and holidays. And in each of these Amidot, in each of these standing meditations, there are, well, we're not going to read all this because it's just too much. So let me just skip to the shorthand here. Every day in our Amida, it's sometimes referred to as the Shmona Esrei because it's made up of 18 blessings. And it's a little confusing because centuries later, they added one more. Okay, so there are actually 19 blessings. But pay attention to 18 because if you're a numbers person, it'll be easier to think of the starting place is 18. Okay, and in that 18, there are 3 introductory blessings and 3 concluding blessings. That's important. 18 as a standard, 3 at the beginning, 3 at the end. Now keep that in mind because that means in the middle, there are 16 blessings, now 17, right, in parentheses, now 17. And those blessings are usually just all of the requests of the things. If you look at a standard Amidah, you'll see prayers for health, prayers for produce, prayers for good judges, prayers for peace, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So 3 and 3, and then those 16 requests in the middle, daily requests. On Shabbat, we take out the 16. We still have the 3 at the beginning and 3 at the end. Every Amidah you ever do is going to have the same 3 blessings at the beginning and the same 3 blessings at the end. Might have little insertions. Remember I said insertions is like a little, like, yay, Rosh Hashanah insertions. But mostly the core is 3 blessings at the beginning, 3 blessings at the end. Now, every day there are 18 blessings, plus 1, 19. On Shabbat, how many blessings are there? Very fitting for Shabbat. There are 7 total. There are 7 total. And the way that happens, right, if you've been following, is that the 3 blessings at the beginning stay and the 3 blessings at the end stay. And all of the middle ones drop out. And instead, we just substitute 1 blessing in the middle that is a Shabbat blessing. It's called Kedushat Hayom, the holiness of this day. Okay? So the Musaf in Shabbat is 3 blessings at the beginning, 3 blessings at the end, and 1 in the middle, and that makes for 7. That's true on Shabbat, it's true on Sukkot, and it's true on Yom Kippur. It's true on all of the holidays. There are, and let me just as a kind of parenthetical here say, part of the reason for that, aside from the fact that 7 is a beautiful number, it works out well that that's 7 on Shabbat. The reason for that is, talk about psychology. The psychology behind that is during the week, we're in a state of need. And so we're asking for things. We're asking for things. On Shabbat, we're seeking a consciousness of satisfaction, of contentment. And so we say the 3 blessings at the beginning and the 3 blessings at the end, but all we say in the middle is, what a day. What a glorious day this is. What a holy day this is. We have no needs. We're just happy to be here. Right, is basically the idea. So talk about psychology. That's already, no requests on Shabbat, no neediness on Shabbat. Even though we may indeed still have needs on Shabbat, we go into a psychic state, right, for a day where we pretend or we summon the idea that we are fully content. Okay, so that's great. That's already a move. But for Rosh Hashanah Musaf alone, in all the year, there's a different number. And that's what we're going to be focused on tonight. On Rosh Hashanah Musaf, there are 9 blessings. And again, if you've been following along, you know that the first 3 and the last 3 are always the same. And so what that means is there are 3 blessings in the middle. Okay, every day of the year, 3:16:3. Every holiday of the year, 3:13, for a total of 7. Rosh Hashanah Musaf alone is doing something unique, which is 3:33. Now, that's exactly what I'm talking about. When you see a move like that there's one prayer in the year that has a different number of blessings than all, but same first 3 and same last 3, you know something is going on. You know something is going. They're doing something. There's a symbol there. And we could use the language of psychology. We could use language of symbolism. You could use the language of theology. I'm not sure exactly what the right term is here, but what we're searching for is, what is the message that this prayer is communicating to us and inviting us to enter into? Okay, so here we are. We've arrived. Musaf, Rosh Hashanah, that very special prayer that I've been hyping up now for 20 minutes, is 3 blessings and then 3 in the middle and 3 at the end. Now, we could sit here and think about the number 9, and that believe me, our commentators have done that. But for some of the major moves we make tonight, I'm gonna and soon we're gonna turn it out to the group and hear your analysis. But sometimes I'm just gonna race through it because there's enough to. We could sit here and speculate on what is the meaning of the 9 blessings, and maybe someone will have comment on that later. But I'm going to kind of rush us through that question by suggesting that whatever else is going on, the 3:3:3 acts as a kind of a bracket. Like there's 3 on each end and 3 in the middle, and it is a way of saying, look at these 3 in the middle. Look at these 3 in the middle. Okay, 3 of 3 of 3 tells you that 3 is it's a triple triplet, right? And so the 3 is in some ways the important number here. And indeed, the Rosh Hashanah Musaf is sort of hallmarked and defined by the middle 3 blessings. Okay, and that's what we're going to look at now. And as we look at the middle 3 blessings, we enter immediately into, as Noah was beginning to take us there, into the big themes of the holiday. Okay, but they're not the most straightforward themes. So part of what I want to start doing right now is to ask, why are these the 3 themes? What is going on here? Okay, so to do that, we're going to look at one piece of text that introduces these 3 themes. And I want to tell you, what we're going to look at right now is a Mishnah. A Mishnah. A Mishnah is the first record of rabbinic teaching. That's put together in the early 3rd century. And that's early in our tradition. That means when a Mishnah, when like some rabbi 5 years ago said something, it's like, it's important. When the Mishnah says something, it's core to our faith. It's like, that's the religion we've inherited. So when the Mishnah says something, it's a big deal. And this is why we're looking at this and not a piyut, which might have been written, 1,000 years later. Okay, so let's take a look at the Mishnah, which here is going to introduce those 3 middle blessings, and in doing so, introduce the 3 major themes of Rosh Hashanah. So let's take a look. Okay, so the order of the blessings in the Musaf Amida in Rosh Hashanah, and they really have to map them out because after all, it's unusual. So the order one says the first blessing. Now the first blessing is always the same, ancestors. It's just thanking God that we're in this tradition that stretches back to Abraham and Sarah. Second blessing, always the same, gvurot, or God's might. Acknowledging that God is awful powerful, and so it makes sense that we're praying to God. And then finally, the last of the first 3 blessings is God's holiness, or the holiness of God's name. God is powerful, but God is also holy. There's something unique, distinct, separate about God. Okay, those are 3 thoughts that we bring to every one of our prayers. They're introductory thoughts. Okay, then the 4th blessing. Now we know that in Shabbat and holidays, the middle blessing, right? In Shabbat and holidays, remember there are not 9 blessings. Oops, there are not 9 blessings, but 7 blessings. And the middle one, I told you earlier, is called the holiness of the day. The holiness of the day. Thank God it's Shabbat, okay? But here, they're going to introduce 3 other blessings. And the 3 blessings are remembrance. Sorry. I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. The 3 blessings are, the 3 themes are kingship, remembrance, and shofar. In Hebrew, it's right here. Malchuyot, zichronot, and shofarot. Okay, like I realize that what I just said you might already be a little bit lost because wait, what did I just do? There's the holiness of God's name, and then there are these other 3, and that is right. The holiness of God of the day. Okay, so again, ancestors, God's might, God's holiness. Then usually on Shabbat we move to a blessing of Shabbat. Now, on Rosh Hashanah, it's true, those middle 3 blessings are about Rosh Hashanah. So we still call the first one Kedushat Hayom. It's still called the holiness of the day, but it's also called kingship. And then there's blessing number 5. And blessing number 5 is called zichronot, memory. And then there's blessing number 6, and blessing number 6 is called shofarot, or shofar. Okay. Now, if we look back at this text that we were just looking at, we'll see that there's a debate. They're debating where exactly do we say these blessings. It's a fascinating debate, but I think for our purposes tonight, we're just going to skip it. And what I want to just, it's worthy of our analysis. And there's psychological kind of suggestions here too. How do we exactly place these middle blessings? Where do they go? But for our purposes tonight, I want to just like, I haven't opened it up to the group yet. I've been talking for half an hour now. And I want to ask in some ways the most primary and basic question before we get dizzyingly complicated. If it doesn't feel complicated enough, let me just ask the basic question, which is why these 3 themes? Why these kingship, memory, and shofarot? And I have to tell you, we could struggle all hour with the metaphor of God as king, and what does that mean? And it's all over Rosh Hashanah, and it's gendered, and it's authoritarian, it's hierarchical, modern people have trouble with. We could spend all of our time just thinking about kingship, and that would be a worthy use of our time. But for tonight, what I'm more interested is in the trio. What does it mean to say that on Rosh Hashanah, in Musaf, in the very climax of our prayers, there are 3 things we should be thinking about? Kingship, i.e. God's majesty, or being a king, or being like a king, or being powerful, or being royal, or whatever that means. Memory. And then shofar. I mean, if you just told me those 3 words, I wouldn't know how to string them together. So we're soon going to get into it in the text of the prayer itself. But can we let's start bringing more voices into this conversation, and just start by wondering why these 3 themes. What do they have to do with one another, and how might the 3 together be saying something about Rosh Hashanah? So let's start with Mark Strunem.
I'm going to push back just a step. I think the meaning of each of the 3 themes is contingent upon an understanding of what's the fundamental purpose or objective of Rosh Hashanah. Because the liturgy, the choice, the structure of the liturgy, the analogies, the metaphors are all in service of that purpose. And I think once you spend time on that purpose and unlock it, it will suggest the meaning of each one of the component parts.
Okay, this is really interesting. So I think I understand you. You tell me if I'm understanding you correctly, but I think I understand you to be saying that it isn't actually about combining the 3 themes and seeing how they stand as this mega trio, but actually we might see each of these, there's a little debate here. In other words, each of these 3 themes picks up on one of the primary themes of Rosh Hashanah, and you might see this as a little bit of a debate happening in the prayer itself. Is Rosh Hashanah primarily about God's majesty? and power? Is Rosh Hashanah primarily about God's remembering us and remembering the covenant? Or is Rosh Hashanah primarily about blowing the shofar, whatever that means, right? Did I understand you correctly, Mark, that you might see these as competing or concurrent themes rather than intertwined themes?
I did not, and I think you moved it forward rather effectively. What I'm commenting on is that whatever we have in the prayer is not there by random. It's not an accident. It's purposeful. And
I agree with that.
And
okay,
I
great.
think
So
there
now,
is a unity.
okay, great. So I agree with that, and I invite others now to, like, Mark and I have opened up a couple of possibilities. You know, one question we have here is whether these themes ought to be tied together. Is it the king who remembers with the shofar that we blow? And is there some mechanism there? Or are they competing themes, or is something else going on? So let's turn to other folks. Florine?
I believe that each part of the service is a means of transporting us to a level of consciousness. And you can call it focus. And it doesn't matter which service I'm in, and I know the structure. The structure and the words are transporting me at that second to a state of consciousness that I need to be in. By the way,
and what?
Okay, I did want to disagree with you about piyutim. For me, piyutim are like prayers. I can do the same thing with the structure of a piyutim.
Okay, so but then Florian, what would you say that I'm with you all the way? What would you say is the state of consciousness that kingship, memory, and shofarat is inviting you into? What's that about?
It's all to elevate me and to make me part of a continuum from Sinai to now. It's to elevate me in the face of Hashem, to understand the continuation of creation and the history of the Jewish people. And it is to move me to elevate myself.
Okay, all right. So this is interesting.
To join.
What's that?
To join.
To join up with this. Okay, so Florine suggests that there's a kind of, what we're doing is, and Florine's really onto something here, because we're going to soon see that this is a little bit the way the prayer works. We're looking backwards, and we're thinking about the formation of our tradition, of our history, of our peoplehood. And these are the major themes in the formation of our peoplehood. And so we're reflecting on these various themes and the way that they together have propelled us through history to come to in an elevation, in a growing elevation. Okay, to come. All right. So still a little amorphous though. So I still want to drill down further into the meaning of these three themes: kingship, memory, shofarot. All right, let's turn to Yonatan and his cute little daughter.
So I want to start with the pshat, like the simplest level to look at this, right? In Torah, Rosh Hashanah is not called Rosh Hashanah, it's called Yom Teruah or Yom Zikaron Teruah, right? So we get two of the themes straight out of the Torah. We get memory and we get shofar. I mean, it doesn't say shofar.
All right, that's exactly right. Let me just speak it out in fuller English. One of the ways that the holiday Rosh Hashanah is referred to in the Torah is Yom Zichron Teruah, the day of remembering the blast. Doesn't even say shofar, but the blast of the shofar. So Yonatan is saying rightly. Oh, so there's a couple of the themes right there. Okay, go ahead.
Right. I mean, obviously that's not where it ends, but that I think is like the basis for those two. And to understand their significance, you have to look to the third, which is never explicitly associated with Rosh Hashanah in Torah literature, but it is associated, and Florine hit on this for sure, with Sinai, right? And with the giving of the Torah, that we hear the shofar, right? The sound that we hear at Sinai is the sound of the shofar, and also the Torah that we get is the crown of Torah, right? So there's a lot of structure around the way the Torah is passed around that has to do with regency, with sovereignty. And it isn't a sovereignty that God holds onto, it's a sovereignty that God gives us to share in. And that's where I think these three things meet, if I'm making much sense.
Oh, you're making a lot of sense. I really like this. Okay, this is a little, Jonathan suggests in some ways a third model, which is, and I really, this is exactly the work that I wanted to do with you all tonight, because there isn't an official, like, and now I'll reveal to you the real meaning of the structure of the prayers. We're given the structure and we're left to speculate. And Jonathan suggests a third model. And I say third as if Mark and I had set up a couple. That is, Mark and I opened by discussing whether these are three themes that are alternatives, like these are three possibilities for how you might think of Rosh Hashanah, or as Florine was suggesting more, these are three intertwined themes that work together in our history. Jonathan is almost saying that the secret of the three themes is that kingship is actually the one that they care about the most, but not, maybe I'm putting too many words into Jonathan's mouth, but here's one way of saying it. Kingship isn't actually part of Rosh Hashanah. It's not in the mention of the holiday. In the Torah talks about blowing the shofar and remembering something. There's never really like any explicit mention of kingship. And yet we know, if we look through the liturgy, that kingship is actually the most prominent of these themes. So part of what we're seeing is that the designers of the liturgy were obsessed with the idea of God as king. And Jonathan suggests, well, it's somewhat intuitive, actually. If you go back to Sinai, which is where we heard the shofar the first time, God is kind of becoming our king, but it's not explicit. And so by joining the two explicit themes with one that's implicit, the mechanism is to wrap kingship in all of the other themes of the holiday in order to elevate and center the theme of kingship. That's an interesting way of thinking about the move that the prayer is making. Okay, so let's hear from a few more thoughts before we press forward. And I want to, but we've got a few good models now on the table. I want to just say, I usually try, when I teach online, try to keep it to an hour. I think last time we did an hour and 15 minutes. And for these kind of cramming feeling, pre-high holiday prep classes, I am probably gonna go again an hour and 15 minutes. So understand if you need to leave at the hour, but just anticipate that we will probably be, in order to get the fullness of this prayer tonight, we'll probably be going till 7:15. So fair warning. Let's see, Susan.
My understanding is that the main mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah is to hear the shofar blown. So the shofar is very important. The idea of kingship, in the Elul, we consider that the king is in the field, he's most accessible to us. And Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are some ways where we recrown Hashem as our king, our God, whatever we want to do, whatever you want to call that. So he goes back into his home and he's also in judgment like a king might be over the population. The idea of memory is both, as Florine had suggested, the memory of Sinai, of what's gone before us, but there's also the personal work during Elul of teshuvah and remembering and slichat and forgiveness and thinking about what we've done in the past year, what we want to improve, but the memory of what we've done.
Okay, this is good. So Susan allows for the possibility that,
Do you want me to raise
you know, these three themes. Oh, do you want to pick up on that, Marvin?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm going to be the devil's advocate in this and say that they're three separate things, because at the end of each section, if I remember correctly, the Gabe Barachim Baratzon Seder, Zichronenu, Zichron Malchusenu, Zichron Shofar, that they're separated and we blow the shofar between each. Is that not the case, or is my memory?
Yes, we're heading there. So hold that thought. We're heading.
So my thought is that they're separate. They're separate things. Why, and that they should not be necessarily conflated.
Okay, great. That, like, let's keep that. That's been one of our theories on the table. And actually, I think Susan allowed for this as well. The idea that, well, memory can mean a lot of things to us, and it ties into a lot of, like, we remember our history with, like, it correlates to remembering our deeds. I mean, there's lots of, but so it is perfectly reasonable to suggest that these are three separate themes that we need to consider separately for Rosh Hashanah. But Susan also began to give us a little bit of a narrative here. And in some ways, this builds on Yonatan's point. The idea is that God is king and that we are crowning and accepting God as king. Now, how do we do that? Well, we might do that with a trumpet blast. Dun, 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 dun. And we might coronate the king with a trumpet blast, and then we might hope that the king remembers us favorably. In other words, we can make a little story out of these three themes that starts with the king, and then everything else becomes part of the coronation ceremony around the king. And that might be, surely these are, we know we blow the shofar in Rosh Hashanah, we know that from the Torah. As Yonatan suggested, actually there were shofarot back on Mount Sinai. That's the only place in the Torah actually where we see shofar sounds, or we hear shofar sounds. So there's a kind of back to Sinai psychic experience that a lot of folks have picked up on here. So maybe it's all, like maybe they're separate, but maybe it's all about the king that was at Sinai. And you know, again, I'm acknowledging the gendered nature of the language here, but like God is our master, God is our ruler, God is our sovereign, and always has been, and we're blowing the trumpet to say that, right? But just as Yonatan pointed out, just note that if that's what the prayer is doing, then it's a little bit of an inversion of what Rosh Hashanah as it actually spelled out in the Torah is doing, because Rosh Hashanah in the Torah just says blow the shofar, it never says why, right? Here we're actually suggesting, oh, we blow the shofar because this is the day of recognizing God's kingship. That's not in the Torah, and so it's kind of like that's a new spin or a new kind of take on what this holiday is all about. Okay, potentially it's a new spin. I think all we've got now is multiple interpretations. Okay, let's take a couple more thoughts, and then I want to push us forward a little bit. Taran.
The one thing I wanted to bring into it is like the like textual difference between the shofarot and zichronot and shofarot blessings and the malchuyot blessing, meaning that like I think that malchuyot only, like the only reason it's there is because of the rest of the stuff that's there. It's not like purely obvious in the blessing that that's what we're talking about. And this is, I'm reading from Lev Shalem. The blessing is, Baruch, blessed are you, God, ruler of all the earth, who makes the people Israel and the day of remembrance holy. It's like, yes, kingship is there, but I feel like kingship is there in every, like,
right, we say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Like it's one of the most standard ways that we refer to God.
Yeah. And it's also like there in all the rest of like the Kiddushat Hayom blessings. So it's like what makes Malchuyot special is not like the way we end it. It's all the rest of the stuff in there before we get to the blessing.
Okay, good. We're going to look at that stuff soon. So keep that in mind. But I think like I think we're hearing a lot tonight, a kind of a theory of the insertion of kingship into Rosh Hashanah, as if to say Rosh Hashanah doesn't start with this idea of king, but somewhere in our history, our sages become convinced that that's what it's all about, and they're making it about that. They're sticking that language in there, and in some ways, it's like, yeah, but we say this blessing of kingship all the time. Like God is, right, Melech Haolam all the time. But somebody who is writing these prayers wants you to be thinking about that aspect of God, especially on this day. All right, let me take one more comment, and then I want to show you one more feature of this. Alexandra?
I was kind of stumped on how to put these three together until I thought about how do we end Yom Kippur with Adonai Hu HaElohim. And that's my favorite mantra, well, my second favorite mantra. And I read a translation of it that is, I serve the God of creation. And so if that's what we're building up to, and that's what we're taking forward out of these high holidays, is I serve the God of creation, then these three themes make a lot of sense to me together. So sovereignty, I'm made in the image of God, you're made in the image of God. We all have our personal sovereignty, and we also, and at the same time, acknowledge God's sovereignty, God's greater sovereignty. And that combined with memory and everything that means, combined with the shofar, the mystical connection to all of that. I don't know that I'm expressing this well, but it makes a lot more sense in my head.
No, I mean, I think I'm picking up on some of what you're suggesting, which is the idea, right? At the end of Yom Kippur, we say, Adonai hu Elohim, Adonai hu Elohim, two different words for God. And you said a lot, Alexander, so I'm not gonna repeat it, but I will say that each of our words for God suggests a different aspect of God. So Adonai, for example, suggests God's eternality. Elohim suggests God's power and might. So when we say that God is this God, part of what we're saying is, I accept upon myself, my master is the eternal one. Or all of the parts of God that I can identify, the loving parts, the scary parts, the powerful parts, the gentle parts, they're all the same, right? So that's important language, because the one aspect of God that we're going to focus on the most during Rosh Hashanah is God as king. And it might not even be our favorite aspect of God, but somehow we're focusing on that, but in the end, only to weave it back in. So what does it mean to have a king? What does it mean to have a master, to have a ruler? Well, whatever it means, I'm taking upon myself as master the eternal one, the deity, the God, the God in our tradition, right? So there's some kind of playing around with various aspects of God, one of which is the relationship that one has to God, where I am a servant of God. Okay, I saw that Ari wants to add one thing, and sorry I didn't see you before, Ari, because your picture was off, but do you want to jump in and add one quick thing here?
Sorry, I was just typing it, but just to say really quickly, a three-part narrative is super ground into our heads, at least as moderns. I don't know if it would be as ancients, but we think of it all the time. Past, present, future, beginning, middle, and end. It's how you tell a story. Birth, death, resurrection, which is a very Christian, Jewish way of thinking about it. And this, to me, is a time horizon too. It's a little bit different. It's foundation, past, present / future, because the way the shofar signals now, but we talked about last week, is sort of an alarm for the future, and it rings out in the future. To me, it's like the foundation is he's a king. Sorry for the gender term. We remember the past, and now we are here and going forward.
Ah, very nice, Ari. Very nice. Like Ari's thinking structurally. He's thinking almost like a 3-act play, right? Like beginning, middle, end, right? And that framing actually is it's perfect for us to have in our minds as we transition to looking at remember Ari's comments here, past, present, future, because they'll be relevant as we turn to look at, so we know we've got 3 blessings in the middle, and their kingship, zichronot, memory or memories, and then shofarot. There's one other element, though, that remember I said this was intricate. It's not just intricate because there are 3 blessings in the middle, or there are 3 themes in the middle. It gets really intricate when we see the next teaching. Again, this goes all the way back to the Mishnah, but take a look at what the Mishnah says here. The Mishnah says, they do not recite it doesn't matter what version I'm in. They do not recite less than 10 kingship verses, 10 remembrance verses, and 10 shofar verses. Okay, so there are 3 blessings in the middle, but now they're telling us that in each of those 3 blessings, you have to recite 10 verses. Now, what does that mean? We'll soon see. But there's a debate, as there always is. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, well, you could just say 3 of each instead of 10 of each, right? Then they say you have to say nice versions. So you could say there's certain verses you could find where, like, God the king is punishing us. Don't say those verses, say nice ones. And then pay attention here. There's one other little twist, which is that one begins with verses from the Torah and concludes with verses from the prophets. Okay, begins with verses from the Torah, concludes. We're soon going to see how this works. But some of you are already probably thinking, well, that's a little weird. That's a little weird. Why would you conclude with the prophets? Because the way that our Bible works, Torah's first, then the prophets, and then what's called Ketuvim, the later writings. But if I'm reading this Mishnah right, and I am because I prepared the class, if I'm reading this Mishnah right, the order here is not Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, Tanakh, but Torah, then Ketuvim, and the Nevi'im. You begin with Torah and end with the prophets. Now, that's a lot of thinking. And then, if that weren't enough, remember we have 10, so then it says, well, Rabbi Yossi says, if you conclude with a verse from the Torah, you have fulfilled your obligation. Now, that's a debate. What we just saw is a confusing little snippet of conversation. That's what a Mishnah is. But let me just boil it down for you into a clear system. And then once again, we're going to pan out and ask, well, what's going on in this system? Here's the system. Okay, here's the structure of the Rosh Hashanah Musaf. And here's what I meant by intricate. The first 3 blessings we know are always the same. Avot, Gevurot, and Kedushat Hashem. Then the middle 3 blessings, and now we know what they are. They're Malchuyot, kingship. And it's, remember we said this before. If it got confusing here, I'm repeating it again. Kingship is inserted into the holiness of the day prayer. Okay, but kingship, zichronot, memory, and shofarot. Okay, but this is the way it works. In each of the kingship, memory, and shofarot blessings, there are 3 verses from the Torah with the word king in them, 3 verses from the later writings, the Ketuvim, with the words king in them, and there's a typo here, but I mean the same thing, 3 verses with the word king in them from the prophets, and then, because of this last opinion, they end it with 1 more verse from the Torah. Oh, sorry, 1 more Melech verse from the Torah. Okay? So remember, you're supposed to say 3 verses, you're supposed to say 10 Malchuyot verses, 10 Zichronot verses, and 10 Shofarot verses. And in each of those blessings, you say 10 verses. And the way that works, says the Mishnah, is first say 3 from the Torah, then say 3 from the later writings of the Bible, which include the Psalms and the Proverbs and Book of Job and the Book of Ruth, the last section. And then the middle 3 verses from the middle section, the verses of the prophets, and then 1 more from the Torah. Whew, okay, is that confusing? Is that a lot? That's a lot. Okay, I want, before we finish, to look at one of those blessings and to see how all of those verses play. Let's actually get a feel for what it looks like. But before we do, again, just seeing the structure, let's start to theorize here. This is we've gotten as complex as we're going to get. This is pretty complex. Each of the middle blessings, each of which represents one of the central themes of Rosh Hashanah, contains within it 10 verses, and the 10 verses are taken 3 from each of the 3 sections of the Hebrew Bible, plus 1 more from the first section. What the heck is going on? I mean, talk about dry me a cup, as they say in Yiddish. You're spinning my head around. Like, what is happening here? Why do I need all of these? You need 10 verses, you need 3 from each section, plus an extra. Okay, all right, so that's my question. What is the messaging here? What's the experience we're being drawn into? Why 10 verses? Why 3 from each section? Let's start to theorize. Noah.
Why 10? I think it's an interesting question. First, that there were these 9 editions for the Rosh Hashanah, Musaf, Amida in total, then it's just adding 1 on there. But why is it going from Torah to Ketuvim to Nevi'im back to Torah? I think it's starting from our entire foundation based on the Torah. Then it's drawing from later sources like Mishlei and all that. So it has those verses. Then it's going to when the prophets were prophesizing about all sorts of things and coming back full circle to finish with the Torah in a very convoluted manner.
Okay, that's actually good. Actually, no, what Noah's given us is, and combine Noah's comments just now with Ari's comments earlier. Ari sort of speculating, there's a beginning, middle, and an end here. There's a journey here. And Noah Noah wants to try to fit that into the scheme. So Noah's thinking, okay, let's start with the Torah. That makes sense. And, you know, we like move through the journey till we get to the prophets. And then, yeah, I hear what you're saying. You know, first of all, like then we loop back to the Torah as if to say, but remember, the Torah is the most important thing. So one more from the Torah, right? Now, let me ask you a question. I mean, I've been sort of in asking it in you know, between the lines all along. Why Torah and then the last section and then the middle section? I had to look this up. It doesn't make any sense at all. But once you hear it, it does make some sense, which is that, yes, there is, in the order of the Hebrew Bible, it goes Torah, prophets, and later writings. But the reason that we go Torah and then later writings and then prophets is because the book that we draw from in those later writings is the book of Psalms. And that's probably the book we draw from the most for our prayers. According to the rabbis, the book of Psalms is written by King David. And so, say the rabbis, the book of Psalms actually does come before all the prophets. It's put there at the end, but remember Ari's comments, it is chronological. We start with the story of the Torah, then we hear a little bit from the kings of Israel, David and Solomon. And in fact, we only hear from David because they're all drawn from Psalms. And then we continue in the journey through chronological history to the next kings and then the fall and then the prophets. The prophets are actually the last figures, right? So it looks a little confusing, but if you accept that logic, then Noah/Ari's theory holds, which is that, and Noah adds some nice stuff here. Look, we've already got, Rosh Hashanah Musaf is already a 3 squared, right? 3, 3, 3. And so it makes sense to keep going with the theme, and 3 from Torah and 3 from the writings and 3 from the prophets. And we do it, as Ari said, past, present, future, beginning, middle, end, journey through history. There's a storyline here. And then as Noah says, but we want 10. And the reason we want 10, I'm seeing some various ideas being suggested. Mark says, maybe it's the Sfirot. Yes, maybe it's the Sfirot, or maybe it's the 10 Commandments, or maybe it's the 10. There are many 10s in our tradition. I think the Maharal says it best when he says 10 just represents completion. And, you know, probably 10 represents completion because that's how we count, right? With our 10 little fingers. So 10 is not such a surprising number, but it is like, it's surprising in this case because as Noah points out, we have 9. 9's 9, and 9 is 3 times 3. And so 3 more 3. The whole thing gets very beautiful because it's 3 here, 3 there, 3 here, 3 taking us through the present, and past, and the future, and the 3 opening. But we just can't resist. Plus 1 more for good measure, 1 more, and so we circle back around to the Torah. Okay, that's good. That's like, we can continue, we can debate this, or we can continue to offer new theories. But that's the nice, we're beginning to crystallize a sort of theory of this very complicated journey through the various verses of that the Mishnah is suggesting. All right, let's hear from, we'll go inside and look at one of these examples before we close. Let's hear from some more interpretations. Janet, what are you thinking?
Well, your question was, why does it keep being repeated? And I was thinking that it's being repeated to help us remember. And if we didn't catch it the first time because we were, you know, not paying attention, or someone was disturbing us, then we hear it the next time, and it continues to wrap around us, as you were saying. But it kind of reminds me of when you have like chocolate fudge cake, and you know, you put down the first layer of cake, and then you put the fudge on it, and then you put the next layer, and then the fudge, and the next, and then you cover the entire thing with fudge. And so through and through you have fudge cake. You can't mistake that it's fantastic chocolate fudge cake. And so that's what I think Rosh Hashanah is for us. It's like delicious chocolate fudge cake that help us remember why we're Jewish, why we're coming to shul. Musaf is the longest part of the service. We're very hungry by the time we get to Musaf. No, not especially on Yom Kippur, but it's to give us something delicious to remember, and that's why I think it's repeated.
Okay, that's great. Janet's focusing on the repetition here, and it's important to keep that in mind, because we spent a lot of time at the outset talking about just these 3 themes. These 3 themes, why are they important? How do they relate to one another? How do they form a unit? How do they interact with one another? And that's true, and it's worth thinking about that. That's part of the work that Rosh Hashanah Musaf is doing. But, says Janet, that's true, but in each of these 3 blessings, we're cycling through again one of the layers of the fudge cake. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Next 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Next. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. So there's a kind of, the repetition itself is a meta message, which is to say kingship. And if Noah and Ari are onto something, we might say, oh, God's kingship has been present with us throughout our history. We can follow it carefully, 3 by 3, all the way through our tradition. So too with God's remembrance of us, God's looking upon us. We can follow that all through tradition. And so too with the blast of the shofar, whatever that means, we can follow that all through tradition. But whatever, it's kind of it may be trickier to trace one theme or another. But once you've done it 3 times, then says Janet, you begin to see that the meta message is God has always been with us. God has always been there. And aspects of God have always been present with us. And we're remembering them again today because they're present with us in this moment. Fudge cake, one layer after another, and now we're really getting it. Oh, right. God is some mighty delicious fudge. Okay. Let's. I see one more. I see a hand up I haven't seen. Jen Snow.
Hi. I think I'm missing something really major about this conversation, and that I'm not seeing anything like, how does this tie into the interiority of any of this? Like, how does this tie into the psychology of any, like, I feel like the idea of kingship, the idea, like all of these ideas are like the external ideas in what we're reading.
Yeah.
I'm not like,
yeah.
the whole conversation. I'm just curious.
That's the most important question. That's the most important question. And if we don't answer that question, we haven't addressed our theme at all. So let's make Jen's question the question that we have to answer before we close. What is, in other words, okay, we have this dizzying structure and we have some of the themes, but how does that affect us? How does it affect us to pray, to move through these themes? Okay, now I get the structure and I've said my first 3 blessings and I'm heading into the kingship blessing. And I'm clicking through my 3 verses, and what happens to me? And I do it again, and what happens to me? Where am I going inside? Okay, so I want to do that. The only thing I want to do before then is I want to just show you at least one example of how this works in one of these 3 blessings, just so we see it, and it isn't just a theory. Which one do you want? You want kingship, memory, or shofarot? Which one's most interesting? Anyone want to take a strong hands for kingship? I don't see a lot of hands. Hands for zichronot, memory. Some hands for shofarot. I think I saw memory. I think I saw the most for memory. So let's just look at memory. I wrote these all out just so we could actually see it. And we're going to move through it rather quickly because we only have a few minutes left. But we're going to look at the way this plays out, and then we're going to turn to Jen's question. Okay, great. Now we get this Byzantine structure, but what is it meant to do to me? So let's take a look at how that plays out in at least one of these. And I'm going to click back to my version here. Okay, so there's the structure. There's the last 3 blessings. Now here is Alainu, right? Here's Malchuyot, and it begins with Alainu, and we do the full prostration. Very exciting. Okay, and you can start to see here the structure that we were talking about, how it all plays out. Okay, that's great. But we're going to turn to God's memory. And I say God's memory because it does seem, I've been just saying the theme memory, but it actually seems like the focus is on God remembering us. Okay, I'm not going to read all of this, but there's an introduction. You remember the dealings of the world and you consider the behavior of those who lived in earlier time. Okay, great. So let's move now to the verses, just so we see how this plays out. You remember, you're remembering God as it is written in your Torah, and God remembered Noah. V'yizkor Elohim et Noach. And it's important that this very word appear in the verse. You remembered Noah. Okay. And then what do you remember next? And God heard their groaning cry, and God remembered the covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and Jacob. Where's that? It's in the book of Exodus. What is God remembering? The covenant. And so God comes down to alleviate the suffering of the Israelites. And then again, another verse in Leviticus, and I will remember also my covenant with Jacob and also my covenant with Isaac and also my covenant with Abraham. I will remember. Okay. All right. Now, where does, all right, that was the first section. That was Torah. Now, where does memory pop up in the Psalms? Well, we can find verses. You can just see them doing that. You can see them sifting through. Oh, God made a memorial for God's wonders, gracious and merciful as Adonai. God gave food to those who feared God. God always remembers the covenant. God remembered God's covenant for them, and God relented in accordance with God's abundant kindness. Oh, so I found 3 verses in the writings, and then again in the prophets. Go proclaim it in the ears of Jerusalem, saying, "Thus said Adonai, I remembered for you the kindness of your youth." Jeremiah. And it is said in the covenant, "I will remember my covenant." Now this is Ezekiel, and you see where I'm going with this. Here's Jeremiah, another verse for Jeremiah. And by the way, if we had more time, it's worth going really carefully. Why do they have 2 verses from Jeremiah? It looks like they couldn't find a good one in Isaiah. I mean, what, why 3 verses from the Psalms? Couldn't they find any other verses from the Proverbs or something? So there are questions to be asked here. But for tonight, I just want you to see the structure. So those are the 3 verses from each. And then finally, remember, we got to have one more. And here's one more from the Torah. I will remember for them the covenant with their forefathers, whom I took out of the land of Egypt before the eyes of the nation to be their God. I am Adonai. And then, blessed are you, Adonai, who remembers the covenant, Zocher Habrit. And then we blow the shofar. So that's just so you see in one of them, and we could do the same, we could trace the same thing through. And I do wish we had another hour so we could think, why Noah first? Why the Exodus second? Why Leviticus third? What's going on here? But okay, let's just, in this last 5 minutes that we have, let's get to the real question of the day, which is Jen's question, which is, and I think we actually have done some of this work so far. If I imagine myself portaling through history and seeing God's presence in every moment in history, if I imagine that themes recur throughout history and that I'm a part of that, right? There's a psychological state being suggested there. But let's go one step further. Let's really answer Jen's question. What does it do to me to have this unusual Musaf, where I say these unusual blessings that mention these 3 themes, and then I cycle through them in this very particular way where I'm picking out verses, cherry picking verses from throughout the Hebrew Bible, verses that take me through the Bible and then back again? Okay, what's happening to me? What is this prayer asking that I enter into? What psychic state, what psychological state is this prayer asking that I enter into? If you haven't spoken yet, now's your chance. If you raise your hand, you will jump to the front of the line. But in the meantime, I'm going to turn to folks who have shared before. Taran?
So this is kind of going to go in a direction I don't think anyone ever thought of. But I think I have a lot of experience with the BDSM community. And like, when I think about dominant submissive relationships and like all of that stuff, that's very much here. Like, you have that energetic power exchange that's happening. And then you have these verses to be like, all right, so what does this power exchange mean to me? And what does it mean to be remembered by that, like, that being that I've chosen to be in that power exchange relationship with? It's a little harder to like explain shofarot, but I think shofarot is just like that remembrance of like the energy of the choice of the contract, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And I also want to thank you for making this like a real Ikar learning, right? Not just some boring tour through the liturgy, but a little BDSM, little of everything. But okay, this is interesting what Taran's suggesting. There's a power dynamic here. There's a power dynamic here, and we have a master. And, you know, maybe the psychic state here is one that we're not so comfortable with as modern people, but it's a state of remembering how powerful God is, how God has always been present, and present in good ways. Sure, God remembers us, but the important thing here is to really come to appreciate, and to appreciate it by drilling it into our throughout history. And the Torah says this, and the Torah says God has always been our master. God has always been in charge. God's power is so magnificent, it stretches throughout history. Feel that. live in that relationship for a day at least. Okay, that's a theory. That's good. Let's see, Ruth Persky. And
Yes.
Ruth, we can't see your face.
Oh, sorry. Yes, it's as if God is asking us to feel within us as if we each had come through the totality of Jewish history, that I was on the ark with Noah, that I was delivered from Egypt, that I stood at Sinai.
Yeah, I love that, Ruth. That's beautiful. Whatever else is happening here, we are taking a tour through a kind of a literary tour through our history, and we are seeing ourselves as part of that. The themes of today were the themes of Noah's day, were the themes of Abraham's day. We have been doing this all along. We stand in a flow, a river of time, and we are a part of it, and it just keeps going, and we can note the same themes coursing through our history because the covenant never ends. God continues to remember us. God continues to rule us. We continue to blow the shofar. We're in that relationship. And that is a particular psychological state, to see myself as part of the flow of time that my people have been traveling, right? To be a part of that. Very beautiful. Let's see, any new hands? Okay. All right. We're almost at time, so I think maybe I'll just end here. And I think that suggestion that Ruth gave, we got a couple of possibilities here, right? What Taran suggested is something that is all about the kingship, the power, and that's one of the theories that we have been working with throughout this class. Maybe it's all about kingship. Maybe it's all like the rabbis are they're using the other themes actually to bring kingship really into the center. Or maybe it's more about the meta theme that Ruth is suggesting, that there are lots of themes that course through our history, but mostly it's the idea of being part of this chain of recurring history, of an ongoing process, and seeing myself in that chain. There are other theories, there are other kinds of analysis, there are other psychological states we can imagine these prayers inviting us into. But the point of tonight is to at least understand the structure of the prayer well enough to speculate and to be prepared for an entry into one of those themes, one of those psychological states. And maybe one of them resonated more with you than another. Maybe you'll be playing with the kingship theme or the shofarot theme, but now at least you see how the prayer has been designed. And without that, you have no hope. You have no hope. You're just sitting with the book on your lap. At least now, I hope that when we come to Rosh Hashanah Musaf, we don't just dance around in ecstasy and bow down and experience those little moments where it seems like something's on it, but we actually understand that there's an elaborate structure being presented to us here, and it's inviting us to something. It's inviting us into a certain state of consciousness. So we've done the work of preparation. A lot more works remains in the work of interpretation, but that's a good start for tonight. Let's close for the evening, and we'll next week, because of the time crunch that we're in, we've done shofarot, we've done Rosh Hashanah Musaf, we're going to turn to the Yom Kippur prayers next week, so we do some preparing there as well. Thank you everybody for your thoughts, for your analysis, for your Torah tonight. Great learning with you all. Kol Tov.